All right, let's talk Las Vegas Raiders. Obviously, the quarterback position is front and center for the Raiders, trying to resolve that. And we've got an exciting update on what direction the Raiders are heading in. Big news out of Las Vegas. But first, I'm Nick, and this is Saturday Morning Inspection. All right, the Raiders for a number of days were tied to quarterback Matthew Stafford, although a lot of people really felt that honestly that was just a ploy by the Rams to negotiate a deal with Stafford. But give credit to the Raiders, right? You take advantage of any potential opportunity. Getting Matthew Stafford in the building would be a big plus. But now that's in the past, the Raiders have reportedly made a decision on where their focus is going to be. Let's go into this report and then we'll break down all of this on the other side. This is courtesy of the Sporting News. According to ESPN's Adam Schefter, the Raiders are expected to investigate Sam Darnold, Russell Wilson, and Justin Fields after striking out on Stafford. With Matthew Stafford remaining with the Rams, the Las Vegas Raiders now are expected to investigate veteran quarterback options that include Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, and Sam Darnold, per sources Adam Schefter wrote. Excuse me. All right, so obviously at this point, we know the Raiders need to address the quarterback position. They are not going to bring Desmond Ridder back. That was reported as well. That makes sense. Ridder was a project guy pulled over from the Atlanta Falcons. He obviously, his career is teetering towards an end at this point. The Raiders need a long-term answer and a short-term answer, or both. And I think they're taking a great approach, focusing on these three guys. Miles, I know you've got a few thoughts on this, so we can talk about all these three guys in just a second. But first, Raider Nation, in the comment section below, of these three targets, which would you prefer if the Raiders could only get one? Maybe they'll be able to get a combination of them, but if they could only get one, who do you want the Raiders to go after? Let us know which quarterback you want to come to Las Vegas. Put them in the comment section below. But Miles, over to you. What are your thoughts on this latest news involving the Raiders and their quarterback position?
Yeah, and I think for the way that the Raiders team is set up now, there's a clear hierarchy to me, at least, of what these quarterbacks should be selected in or prioritized in, who they should get and why. And I think when you look at this team, this is a team that when you look at their PFF grades, pass blocking, they're a little bit better at pass blocking than they are run blocking. They're 20th in the NFL in run blocking. They're about 13th in the NFL when you look at pass blocking. That kind of gives you the division here. Probably, you need to be able to elevate the run game. You need some youth. You need some explosion in that part of your offense. I think Justin Fields is the guy that I would say is at the top of my list as far as if you could get a guy, one of these guys, if these are your options, he would be at the top of my list. He's young, he's raw, he has phenomenal running ability. We've seen that before. He opens up things with his legs very, very well. And I think you're not quite a team yet. You don't have all of the weapons as far as receivers and things like that go. I think they're going to work towards that going down the stretch. But I think he brings you the most instant success and he has the highest ceiling. And he has a pretty good floor as well with what he brings with his legs. He has the most potential. It could be rocky. It could not work out. But I think he has the most potential of anybody to work out. The second guy I bring in, and these two guys are kind of in a similar tier to me. These are more of a stopgap guy. These are guys that you don't want to put your future on either of these next two guys, but there's one that is more appealing to me than the other. And my second one that I would pick for the Raiders is Russell Wilson, specifically because of Pete Carroll. If he's looking at these guys, he knows Russell Wilson, he knows his limitations, he knows how to build. Russell Wilson, he's going, if he leaves the Steelers, goes to the Raiders, probably get him on a cheap deal and they're able to build a team to his strengths, which Pete Carroll knows explicitly. He knows exactly what this guy is capable of doing and what offense is best suited for Russell Wilson. So in that aspect, I see Russell Wilson as my clear number two, making number three be Sam Darnold. I think Darnold, he was in a really strong team and a really strong offense in Minnesota. I don't think him coming to the Raiders makes him any better. I think you probably actually get a dip in production out of a guy like Darnold if he moves over to Las Vegas. So in my priority, I'd have him at the third lowest ranking when it comes to these guys. I think there's a lot of interesting options. Like you said, I don't think Stafford ever was really too much of an actual option for this team. But of the three guys they're rumored to be looking into right now, that's my ranking. Justin Fields, Russell Wilson, Sam Darnold.
It's interesting because that's actually the rankings probably in salary cap hit as well. The theoretical hit would be lowest to highest would be Fields, Wilson, and then Sam Darnold. If you look at their valuations over at overthecap.com, which I highly recommend, it's a great website. They have Justin Fields currently sitting at a based on 2024 numbers, so it'll be up about 10% theoretically, about 6.5 million bucks. Russell Wilson about 16.5 million bucks, and Sam Darnold about $38.5 million. Now, those numbers obviously big deltas between all three of those guys. Fortunately for the Raiders, they've got an incredible amount of cap space, currently sitting at about the way it is right now. I'm trying to look up these numbers right here. Give me a second. $96.5 million, the way it currently sits as of this moment, refreshing my screen. Maybe by the time you read this or hear this, it has changed slightly. But the reality is, right now, the Raiders' cap space isn't a constraint. So it's all about fit. And I think this is where it gets very interesting because Sam Darnold, to me, is the worst fit. I agree with you there. I know a lot of people are high on Darnold, but let's look at Sam Darnold's career for a second, right? This is a guy who struggled in New York, right? Struggled with the Carolina Panthers the two times he came into a program expecting to be a starter. Those were rebuilding programs, new head coaches, new environments. Now, I expect Brady, Spytek, Carroll, that triumvirate there running the Raiders to be much better than what was going on with the Jets and with the Carolina Panthers. But the reality is Sam Darnold has struggled in these rebuilding projects, right? That's been his entire career. He goes to a team in the Minnesota Vikings that have a lot of talent, good culture, good head coach, and he's able to succeed and do a lot of good things, except when it really mattered, he floundered their final two big games of the season. The reality is Sam Darnold is a decent enough quarterback, but he's much more suited for a roster that's good and has talent and is just looking for some stability. Maybe they got a young quarterback, maybe they have injuries, than to come into a rebuilding situation like the Raiders. The Raiders need stability. They need someone to elevate and get them back to winning 7, 8, 9 games a year. I think Darnold is not the guy. I think he's the worst fit. I think you should let him go. On a side note, right, one name that hasn't been reported according to Adam Schefter, which I think is very insightful, Aaron Rodgers has not been linked to the Raiders, which let's give some credit to the Raiders for getting this right, because Aaron Rodgers would basically have the same Sam Darnold problem on steroids. Rodgers is a guy at this point in his career. He's trying to chase titles. He's trying to chase wins. He's not going to be a guy to elevate you in terms of getting you to a level of stability. He wants to go out there, play his kind of game, his kind of style. He's not going to mess with your offense, not going to mess with your talent. I'm a big Aaron Rodgers guy. I love him, first ballot Hall of Famer. The reality is, credit to the Raiders for not falling into the Aaron Rodgers trap. Good move on their part, which I think directly leads me into what I think the best fit is, and that's Russell Wilson. I think Justin Fields, I agree with you, he has a much higher ceiling, but it's time for the Raiders to focus on stability, winning those 8, 9, 10 games again, competing for playoff berths. This was the one thing Derek Carr had going for him, is that he had a certain level of stability. He was a B quarterback, right? He wasn't a B plus guy, wasn't an A guy, but he was a solid B guy. He could take it to the playoffs. He could give you, I think they went twice to the playoffs. One year, of course, he got hurt, and then the other year they got eliminated by the Bengals. He's a guy that can get you. Russell Wilson is very similar to what Derek Carr is. Now, is he going to win you a title at this point? Absolutely not. What the Raiders are trying to do right now is to get things back to a winning mode, rebuilding that culture, rebuilding that environment. Remember, in order for the Patriots to get back to winning, people forget this. They obviously had that Bill Belichick area around 2000s, early 2000s when he came into the fold. It was Pete Carroll in the late 90s and Bill Parcells in the mid 90s that took the Patriots from a dumpster fire to a stable organization under the Crafts. And when it was time for them to get their long-term head coach and their quarterback, Brady Belichick, they had a decent core, a decent amount of talent already there in place. The Raiders need to get to that point, right? The same thing happened with the Kansas City Chiefs. They had Alex Smith, Andy Reid, good amount of talent. They needed their quarterback, but they had to get the culture in place first. They had to get a solid veteran, Alex Smith. They had to get a good coach in Andy Reid. And that's exactly what the Raiders need to solve now. They need that solid veteran presence. Russell Wilson is that guy. I know a lot of, and maybe it's Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Maybe it's both of them. I don't know. I don't think they get combined together. I think that'd be a little ridiculous if they do it again. But I think Russell Wilson is far away the best fit. And if that's the approach you take, then I don't think the Raiders should trade up to try and get a quarterback. I think if you go Russell Wilson, you let him ride as your starter for a year or two, and then use the 2025, 2026, 2027, maybe mid rounds to try and find your quarterback, not early in the first round. So that leads me to another question for you, Miles, right here, just to kind of wrap things up. Between these three quarterbacks, we know the priorities. We talked about the best fits there. Do you think if they go with one of these three, which it looks like they will, that they should also go quarterback in this draft? And if so, who do you think they should go after, if anyone at all?
I think if the situation is right, I agree with what you said. I do not think that they should trade up for a quarterback in this draft. It just, the way things are going, it doesn't make sense. The team is not ready for that. And who knows how good these quarterbacks are going to be. At the beginning of this cycle, everyone said, oh, these guys are number one, number two overall. And it's gotten less and less and less as we have gone on. So I don't think it's a time to trade up for a guy. And I almost wonder, do you trade back? If these quarterbacks start to slide, can you make room to trade back in the draft? I think that's something we've been hearing as well. It's especially Shadur Sanders. Not saying he's not a good player, but his draft ranking, it's been sliding some. So it could be a good opportunity to even, and it's crazy, trade back a little bit for the Raiders as well. So if the quarterback falls to you in this draft, I think that if it's the right one, if Cam Ward or Shadur Sanders, if it's somebody that you like, you probably go ahead and take that flyer on them. But if it doesn't work out exactly right, I think you no problem take best player available, probably a skill position guy or a guy for the defensive side of the ball, and really help out this team. Start to build the team like you said. They need the stability, and I think these young draft picks coming onto the team is the perfect way to help them.
And I think one final note to end on here in terms of my opinion, I tell you what, I don't like the Raiders. I kind of was high on them earlier this cycle, going, well, maybe they should trade up and get Shadur Sanders, one of those guys. I actually love this combination here because we know it's worked with Pete Carroll in the past. You sign Russell Wilson, you got more than enough cap space to have him come in on a 2-year deal and make everyone very happy, and then obviously fill out the rest of your roster. But how about you draft a guy like Dylan Gabriel, right, in the mid rounds? You got a quarterback out of Oregon who actually is basically Russell Wilson 2.0, did the whole transfer game, won a lot of games, played at a high level, conference titles, the whole thing, right? College football playoffs, leadership experience, accurate, smart. Does he have the incredible world beating athleticism or physical tools? No, but neither did Russell Wilson. And Pete Carroll went to 2 Super Bowls and won one with Wilson at the quarterback position. And frankly, neither did Tom Brady. And we obviously know how he turned out. I think that's the approach the Raiders take here. But it starts with getting these three fits right in terms of veterans. And I agree with you 100% there. In conclusion, Sam Darnold by far the worst. A lot of people are high on him. Don't think it's a good fit for the Raiders are trying to do. I think Wilson, Fields is probably the backup in my mind between the two, and then maybe getting a mid-round quarterback. That's the approach the Raiders should take.